The Queen died exactly 12 months ago, and King Charles, who'd been waiting rather longer than he probably had fancied, stepped into her shoes. Judging by our poll tonight, a year on from the Queen's death, has King Charles filled her shoes? Not many believe that he has. Ham-fisted, to say the least. Thick-tongued, to say the least. Stupid, well, many people think so. His endless devotion to the World Economic Forum, to Charles Schwab, and to every piece of greenery, quackery, and wokery known to man, woman, or indeterminate, has not endeared him to his subjects. Neither has the massive pay increase that he has pocketed without so much as a by your leave or a single blush. And his decision that Camilla, his second wife, whom he promised would never be queen, to now dub her the Queen of the United Kingdom, Great Britain, Northern Ireland, and such remaining dominions that carry his face on their stamp, have been told that she is Queen Camilla. Not many takers for that one, even fewer actually than for the kingdom of King Charles. Has he filled her shoes? Well, my good friend Scouser Lar up in Liverpool, of all places, says yes, entirely. We now have a second parasite living off the public purse for doing not very much. And he has a point, at least so far as Charles is concerned. The Emperor, Emmanuel Macron, had the gall, who advises these politicians, to go out onto the pitch, to a podium, to kick off the Rugby World Cup, even though he knows that at least 75% of the people of France despise him, only to be booed and jeered by what sounded like every last one of them. His remaining 25% supporters were clearly not present in the Stade de France, because every French voice was raised and they roared, not the Marseillaise, but "Get out of here, you bum," at little Macron. The people despise these regimes. The German regime fell this week to 17% support in the public opinion polls in Germany. And I'm wondering who those 17% could possibly be. In France, in Germany, in the United Kingdom, where we have a prime minister constantly on the road, draped in garlands of flowers, genuflecting to Indian potentates everywhere he turns. I saw him on his knees to Sheikh Hasina of Bangladesh, the dictator of Bangladesh, just a few minutes before coming on air tonight. Rishi Sunak, or as Americans will know him, Rashid Sunak, is a nowhere man. John Lennon could have written that song about him. The question is, when will the men in grey suits in the Conservative Party make a decisive move against him? Or have they decided that they are going to go quietly into the good night of a Keir Starmer landslide that may well keep the Tories out of power for a decade or more? Joe Biden actually went to a podium in front of all the journalists and grandees of Vietnam today and said, "It's evening in Vietnam, isn't it? You remember the film?" he said, "Good morning, Vietnam." Well, it's good evening, Vietnam. A note to younger viewers, Good Morning, Vietnam, starring the late and great Robin Williams, was a film about the United States' illegal and annihilating invasion and occupation of Vietnam, in which millions of Vietnamese were slaughtered by the high-powered weaponry of the United States of America, of which Joe Biden is, for good or ill, the latest president of the Republic. Instead of coming on his knees in obeisance, seeking forgiveness from the people of Vietnam, Joe Biden danced on their graves. The only saving grace could possibly be that he had no idea where he was and what was the import of what he was saying. He'd just come from the G20, in which he mispronounced the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the United States' erstwhile closest ally, rapidly receding in its friendship from the United States, just frozen its production of oil in direct collaboration with the Russian Republic. A deal hammered out on the phone between Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and President Vladimir Putin. He went on to say that bin Salman would not be speaking today at the conference, even though he'd actually already spoken, and his speech and the words therein, the warnings therein, had clearly gone over the head of senile Joe. Every day I look at videos that make it more obvious to me than it was the day before that the Democrats cannot possibly be thinking seriously of running this man, not this November, but next November, for another 4-year presidential term. You've heard of the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Joe Biden leads the gang that cannot walk straight, cannot walk up aircraft steps, cannot walk upstairs, downstairs, or along a platform in the right direction at the right time. It must be a game. They must be planning to anoint someone else. And it sure as hell can't be Kamala Harris. The New York Times asked today, why is Joe so unpopular? Like anybody needs to ask that question. But in the small print, it became clear that if Joe is so unpopular, Kamala is even more unpopular. And so a wild card must be being prepared. Some are speculating it'll be Michelle Obama, but she's gone off with an apparent state of distress following the revelations, if they be so, in the Tucker Carlson interview with the man who claimed he twice had sex and crack with the soon-to-be President of the United States, then Illinois State Senator Barack Obama. In the wake of the publicity about Barack Obama's sexuality, Michelle Obama fled to Spain to live with a friend of theirs and his husband, which doesn't sound to me like the kind of thing you would do when you were just about to announce that you're running for the nomination. To put Barack Obama, this time as the missus, back in the Lincoln bedroom or wherever else she'd make him sleep. That all sounds far-fetched to me. So some other wild card must be being prepared. Perhaps it's the governor of California who has turned the Sunshine State rancid, with scarcely a store left unplundered by feral mobs who have decided, as mobs tend to do, that the offense of shoplifting is no longer on the statute book, that the emaciated police forces of California are incapable or maybe unwilling to intervene. It's not that they're out on the street checking the endless lines of publicly defecating citizens on the streets of Los Angeles. It cannot be that the police are otherwise busy clearing the tent cities that are the fruits of the Sunshine State's endless Democratic Party governance in the state. Mind you, it could be worse. You could be on the streets of Philadelphia, which are alive, barely, with zombie-like figures, staggering in various states of stupefaction, hooked on fentanyl and other opioid substances, living homeless, jobless, and hopeless. Such people must have perked up at the promise made by Joe Biden that he's going to build a railroad right across the African continent. With what? Not with the increasingly worthless American Treasury bonds. Saudi Arabia alone in the last 3 months has ditched $80 billion worth of US bonds. China is doing the same. The stark, brazen worthlessness of American paper currency is ever more vividly exposed. Who's going to build this railroad across Africa? Why don't you just get off the backs of the people of Africa and let them build their own railroad with a partner, China more likely, that has already built thousands of kilometers of railroad in the Belt and Road Initiative in Africa and elsewhere. But the empty hollowness of the Democratic Party has not stopped them moving might and main to crush the possibility of humiliating defeat for Joe Biden in the Iowa caucus primaries coming up in just a few months' time, in the winter snows. Not only have they pulled out of the early caucuses in New Hampshire, in Iowa, they have said that anyone who does participate in those primaries will have any delegates that they win as a result of those primaries will be null and void and will not be counted at the convention. And the worm is beginning to turn. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who will surely win those primaries in a landslide, has said that he will now have to look again at his plan to be the Democratic Party's candidate when the election comes along. And so he well might, so he well should. A third party candidature, or even a switch to the Republican Party, giving him, I'm certain, second place at least in the race to be the Republican nominee, guaranteeing him a place on the ticket. Trump, Kennedy, unstoppable, unbeatable. That's the way to go if you want to derail the toxic train that is the Democratic Party of America. I have time only to deal with one other matter, but it is a weighty one indeed. I won an award this evening, which I must share with my first guest, Garland Nixon. but I'm going to make an even more substantial award to Elon Musk. My usual caveat: I've never met the man. He's not the sort of fellow I could ever see myself hanging out with. But I believe that Elon Musk is the man that saved the world. And more importantly for him, having saved the world, his card is now marked, his businesses in grave danger, and his life perhaps under threat. When Elon Musk refused to extend the coverage of Starlink being provided free of charge to the Ukrainian military, to the area above the Russian naval fleet in Sebastopol, when he refused to be a party to a Pearl Harbor style attack on the massed fleet of the Russian Navy, he saved the world. Because if that attack had happened, if the Russian Navy, like the American Navy at Pearl Harbor, had been decimated, then a state of war would immediately have existed. Not between Russia and Ukraine, but Russia and Ukraine and all of its allies who had made that Pearl Harbor attack possible. He didn't switch off Starlink over Sebastopol, as hundreds of mendacious journalists have spent all week lying about. He just refused to extend the normal free coverage that he was giving to the Ukrainian military to absolve himself, at least, of any responsibility of the consequences, almost certainly in the end, nuclear consequences of such a dastardly attack. It would have been a day that lived in infamy for Russians, in the way that the attack on Pearl Harbor still resounds in the minds of the people of the United States. In so doing, he was immediately placed on the target list of those who have murdered so many good people, journalists, the children of philosophers, that's right, poets, writers, murdered on the kill list of the death squads of the Ukrainian regime. But all this happened months ago. Why has it now been resurrected? I'll tell you why. Joe Biden made it very clear, well, as clear as anything ever is from Joe Biden. It was halting, it was stuttering, it was stammering, it was subliterate, to be sure. But it was an unmistakable warning that the United States intended to move against Elon Musk, and move over these months. They definitely have. His SpaceX business, his Starlink business, his Tesla business, his Twitter business are all under full spectrum attack from agencies of the United States government, its satraps in the European Union, and so-called N, so-called G, so-called O NGOs in the United States. The most significant of which is the Democratic Party Front Organization, the so-called ADL, which defames all in the name of being anti-defamation. Elon Musk, about whom I'll talk to my fellow award winner, Garland Nixon, in just a minute. Stay tuned. It is the mother of all talk shows.